18-minute piece, and the title refers to an architectural term that conflates the words slum and suburb. The Slurb was commissioned by the city of Tampa, and it is a portrait of Tampa, a kind of a speculative fiction of Tampa in the future were flooding to sort of take over. So it's kind of an after the deluge work. And you can see if you watch in the 18 minutes, the piece is divided into 3 sections roughly. There's the city of Tampa itself underwater, then you go past the bridge that takes you to St. Petersburg, into the broken highways and out into what used to be the suburbs. One of the main things about the piece that I did a lot of research on was what was happening with the Gulf itself. And 2 things are more and more the case now. One is the Gulf is more and more prone to flooding and unpredictable weather. Floods are happening in greater amounts and in more surprising times. The piece was also made a year and a half after Hurricane Katrina, and it was impossible to get away from that as a kind of an overarching vision for the work of the future. So what I discovered is that the Gulf area used to be very rich shrimp fishing area and a big local economy, and in the last maybe 12 or 13 years, boats more and more have been refitting these shrimp trawlers to harvest cannonball jellyfish, and jellyfish are consumed and have been historically by the Asian market, so there is some market for these workers to sell something out of the ocean. The sound was composed by J. Ignacio, a composer I've worked with for a long time, and he and I were really interested in taking these loops that look very broken. Everybody in the piece is a loop, and it's not a very seamless loop, so there's a kind of a stutter or a brokenness to the piece itself that I think he echoed really well in the sound. The other kind of overarching idea in the piece was that this was a kind of a tailgate party from a very hellish festival. And you see people like the fat lady from the circus getting up and sitting down repeatedly. You see preachers preaching incessantly without really saying anything. You see the little kid on top of the trailer preaching. You see a man on top of one of the amphibious houseboats preaching incessantly. And all of those characters also came from the internet. I found a preaching competition website that had a lot of video clips of people practicing or performing their sermons. This piece is called Weights and Measures. It's 2 minutes and 44 seconds long. It's a seamless loop. It is comprised of 3 components: elephants swimming, airplanes sinking, and plankton floating through the water. The title Weights and Measures asks a question, and that is, what do we value, how do we set up comparisons, and what do we think of as important in any given ecosystem? So the way that the 3 components of the elephants, the airplanes, and the plankton operate is in sets of 2. And you can look at them kind of as odd pairings. For instance, elephants swim, but you wouldn't think that they swim. Airplanes sink, but you would think that they float. Airplanes and elephants were developed as instruments of war. They are both a kind of conveyance for military strategists. Elephants produce methane, quite a bit of it actually, and plankton absorbs carbon dioxide. Airplanes give off a lot of carbon dioxide and methane. So there are these kind of funny relationships between the parts that I was really interested in looking at. Who's at the top of the food chain, who's at the bottom of the food chain. We tend to think of things like elephants and airplanes as celebrity creatures, if I may call an airplane a creature. Yet we don't really pay much mind to these tiny speckles that are plankton. Plankton is a crucial component in the food chain. It's the very bottom of the food chain, and without plankton, all ocean life would die. The 146 hours of Mesocosm represent 1 year in the landscape of a North English moor. Every minute is an hour. It takes 24 minutes to make a day, and so on. So that's how I ended up with a 146-hour-long piece. When the 146 hours are over and it's January 1st again, the piece begins anew, but it is never the same identical year. Mesocosm is not a movie loop. Mesocosm is essentially performing itself in real time. Characters are called out onto the stage of this landscape, they perform their actions, and then they leave. The interaction between these characters is dependent upon a probability equation. I was interested in really making an experimental landscape, a landscape that would encompass a lot of different ideas about nature in the same space. It looks like a painting. Obviously it doesn't perform like a painting. It doesn't even perform like a movie because things are randomly, to some degree, algorithmically emerging and disappearing off the stage. So there's a lot of surprising interactions. Sometimes the stage is full of characters, sometimes the stage is empty for very long periods of time. It snows for days, it doesn't snow at all. And I don't control that beyond inputting a set of numbers that say there's a 10% chance that this will happen. There are 175 different events. Some of those are animals, some of those are the man, some of those are the weather, and each of those events has a possibility of interacting with other events. One of the things about the function of this man in Mesocosm is that he is not a real man. He's almost a keeper of the woods. In the summer, you'll see, as he's sitting on his stump, garden animals, notably a series of very favored English garden birds and their very favorite native red squirrel will come and feed on his body. They'll actually eat chunks of him, and he'll sort of magically heal over a short period of time. So his flesh is restored to normality in time. There are 2 black wings to each side of the vertical main stage, and they are activated when animals exit or enter the frame, or when the man leaves. He gets up off of his stump and he leaves the frame. It provides this kind of interesting surprise where suddenly you understand that what you thought were the edges of this world are broken. The boundaries of the painting are broken, and you see that there is the possibility of a world outside of what I choose to represent and delineate within the scope of what you're looking at. This felt very important to me to talk about the construction of a landscape painting.